Have you been doing everything you were told to protect your kidneys? Cutting back on meat, avoiding salt, choosing salads over steak? And yet somehow your lab numbers keep getting worse. Have you ever stared at your creatinine results and felt that quiet fear in your chest, wondering if you're slowly moving closer to dialysis, no matter how disciplined you try to be? I need you to hear this clearly, because what I'm about to say could change the direction of your health in the United States. Millions of people are losing kidney function silently, and most of them don't feel a single warning sign until more than half of their kidney capacity is already gone. By the time fatigue becomes constant, by the time swelling starts, by the time your doctor says we need to monitor this more closely, the damage has often been progressing for years under the surface. My name is Dr. Richard Hale, and after decades of working with patients across this country, I can tell you something that may surprise you. Some of the healthy choices people make out of fear are actually accelerating their decline, not because they're careless, but because they've never been shown the full picture. And if you stay with me for the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a clear, practical strategy, simple, affordable, sitting in your own refrigerator right now, that can help protect your muscle, stabilize your labs, and reduce unnecessary strain on your kidneys before it's too late. One of the most dangerous beliefs spreading across social media right now is the idea that protein destroys your kidneys. It sounds logical, it sounds safe, it even sounds responsible. But for millions of people with early or moderate kidney disease, that belief is not protective, it is quietly accelerating decline. The real issue is not protein itself. The real issue is the type of protein you choose and the amount you consume. When fear replaces physiology, people begin cutting protein aggressively, believing they are buying time when in reality, they may be speeding up muscle loss, metabolic stress, and long-term kidney strain. Let me tell you about Daniel, a 62-year-old retired contractor from Ohio. After being told his creatinine was a little high, he did what most people do. He searched online. Within weeks, he eliminated meat completely, then eggs, then even Greek yogurt. His meals became bowls of vegetables and fruit smoothies. He was proud of his discipline. 6 months later, he came into my office exhausted. He had lost nearly 14 pounds, not fat, but muscle. His albumin levels had dropped. His grip strength had weakened, and shockingly, his creatinine had climbed higher than before he changed his diet. He looked at me and said, "I thought I was protecting my kidneys." Here is what was actually happening inside his body. When you do not consume enough high-quality protein, your body does not simply adapt, it survives. And survival means breaking down its own muscle tissue to extract the amino acids it desperately needs for immune function, hormone production, and cellular repair. That internal muscle breakdown releases nitrogenous waste into the bloodstream, urea, creatinine, acidic byproducts, the very substances your kidneys are already struggling to filter. So ironically, severe protein restriction can increase the metabolic load placed on compromised kidneys. Modern nephrology research supports this nuance. Studies from renal nutrition journals consistently show that moderate intake of high biological value protein helps preserve muscle mass and stabilize albumin levels in chronic kidney disease patients. Albumin, by the way, is not just a number on your lab sheet, it is a powerful predictor of survival and resilience. Low albumin correlates with higher hospitalization rates and faster progression toward dialysis. The body cannot maintain albumin without adequate protein. Cutting protein blindly does not rest the kidneys. It weakens the entire system that supports them. This is where context matters. In advanced kidney failure, protein management becomes more restrictive. But in early to mid-stage CKD, complete avoidance is rarely the answer. The National Kidney Foundation and multiple renal dietitians emphasize balance typically around 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, depending on individual circumstances. That is not zero. That is precision. It is the difference between nourishment and neglect. And here is the uncomfortable truth: many people avoid muscle is not just cosmetic. Muscle acts as a metabolic reservoir. It helps regulate blood sugar, reduces systemic inflammation, and stabilizes hormonal signaling. When muscle declines, insulin resistance rises. When insulin resistance rises, microvascular damage increases, including damage inside the kidney's delicate filtering units. So in trying to protect the kidneys by slashing protein, Some patients unknowingly increase the very inflammatory and metabolic stressors that worsen kidney decline. Have you noticed unexplained weakness lately? Difficulty climbing stairs that used to feel easy? Thinner arms, more fatigue than usual. I want you to be honest with yourself. Are you restricting protein out of fear? If this sounds familiar, leave a comment below because I read them, and you are not alone in this pattern. But let me be clear, this does not mean eat unlimited steak or ignore kidney guidelines. It means we stop treating protein as the villain and start treating it as a carefully dosed therapeutic tool. Quality over quantity, biological efficiency over bulk, precision instead of panic. That shift alone can stabilize muscle protect albumin and reduce hidden metabolic strain. And yet, as important as this misunderstanding is, protein itself is not the most dangerous confusion patients face. Because even when people reintroduce protein correctly, many still sabotage their progress without realizing it. There is another layer to this story, one that involves a common food sitting in almost every American refrigerator, a food people fear for the wrong reasons. But simply correcting the protein myth is not enough, because there is another factor even more misunderstood that determines whether protein becomes medicine or metabolic pressure. And most people get that part completely wrong. Now that we've dismantled the myth that protein itself is the enemy, we need to talk about the food that sparks the most confusion, the most fear, and the most heated debates online, the egg. Few foods have been as misunderstood, demonized, and then quietly redeemed by science as the humble egg. And when it comes to kidney health, the conversation becomes even more polarized. Some people say stick to egg whites only. Others warn avoid eggs completely. But the truth is far more nuanced and far more powerful than either extreme. Let's start with what most people don't know. The biological value of egg protein is nearly 100, which means your body can utilize almost all of it efficiently. That's not marketing hype, that's physiology. Biological value measures how effectively dietary protein is converted into body protein. Many plant proteins score around 60 to 70. That gap matters especially when your kidneys are already under strain. The more usable the protein, the less metabolic waste is generated. In simple terms, one well-utilized protein source creates less filtration burden than a larger quantity of lower efficiency protein. But this is where fear takes over. The moment people hear egg, they think cholesterol, they think phosphorus, they think danger. So they remove the yolk entirely, believing they've solved the problem. Let me tell you about Patricia, a 59-year-old school administrator who came to see me after 6 months of strict egg white only breakfasts. Her protein intake had improved, yes, but she complained of persistent fatigue, mood instability, and difficulty concentrating. Her labs were stable, but her vitality wasn't. When we reintroduced one yolk 3 times per week, her energy improved within weeks. Why? Because the yolk is not just fat and cholesterol. It contains vitamin D, B12, choline, selenium micronutrients, critical for mitochondrial function, inflammation, control, and neurological health. Science supports this balance. Moderate egg consumption has not been shown to significantly raise cardiovascular risk in most individuals when part of a balanced diet low in processed, saturated fats. And in renal nutrition studies, patients who include moderate whole egg intake demonstrate better muscle preservation and improved albumin levels compared to those who eliminate eggs entirely. Albumin stability is not cosmetic. It correlates with lower hospitalization rates and improved survival in CKD populations. The egg white, on the other hand, is nearly pure protein, low in fat, minimal in phosphorus, relative to its protein yield, and exceptionally efficient. That is why it is often recommended as one of the safest protein sources for individuals with reduced kidney function. So the solution is not fear-driven elimination. It is intelligent proportion. For many early to moderate CKD patients, 2 egg whites combined with 1 yolk several times per week strikes a balance between muscle preservation and micronutrient sufficiency without overwhelming phosphorus load. Extremes are easy. Precision is harder. Social media thrives on black and white advice. Never eat yolks. Avoid eggs completely. Those statements get clicks. But biology doesn't operate in absolutes. Your kidneys do not respond to viral trends. They respond to metabolic balance. The difference between harm and healing often lies not in the food itself, but in the dosage frequency and overall dietary context. I want you to pause for a moment. Have you been avoiding yolks out of fear? Have you removed eggs entirely because someone online said they were too hard on the kidneys? If so, ask yourself whether your decision was based on data or anxiety. Leave a comment below if this resonates because I see this pattern more often than you might think. Here is the practical takeaway: quality over quantity, proportion over panic. Use egg whites strategically as a high-efficiency protein source. Include yolks moderately for essential micronutrients that support energy and inflammation control. Avoid pairing eggs with high-sodium processed foods that negate their benefit. And most importantly, evaluate your entire dietary pattern, not a single ingredient in isolation. But even when you correct the protein myth and understand the balance between white and yolk, there is still a deeper physiological trap that many kidney patients fall into. It doesn't show up on your grocery list. It doesn't come from fear of cholesterol. It develops quietly over time, and it accelerates decline more aggressively than most dietary mistakes. And knowing how to use eggs correctly is powerful, but knowing this next factor may be the difference between stabilizing your kidney function and watching it slip faster than you expected. But just knowing this isn't enough because there is another factor even more dangerous. Even after correcting the protein myth and understanding how to use eggs intelligently, there is a deeper physiological trap that quietly accelerates kidney decline, and almost no one talks about it. It's not a specific food, it's not a supplement. It's a cycle. A vicious, self-reinforcing loop that begins with undernutrition, spirals into inflammation, and ends with faster loss of kidney function. I call it the malnutrition, inflammation, decline cycle. And once it starts, it feeds on itself. Here's how it works. When protein intake drops too low for too long, the body doesn't simply rest. It adapts by breaking down skeletal muscle to survive. That muscle breakdown releases amino acids, yes, but it also releases nitrogen waste products into circulation. Urea rises. Creatinine production shifts. At the same time, muscle loss reduces insulin sensitivity, making blood sugar harder to control. Elevated glucose levels damage microvascular structures, including the glomeruli, the tiny filtration units inside your kidneys. Reduced muscle also lowers metabolic reserve, meaning even mild illness or stress hits harder. Now add inflammation to that picture. Chronic kidney disease is already associated with low-grade systemic inflammation. But when nutritional status declines, inflammatory markers like CRP and IL-6 often rise further. Inflammation increases oxidative stress. Oxidative stress damages endothelial cells lining blood vessels, including renal microvasculature. That damage reduces perfusion efficiency. Reduced perfusion worsens filtration stress. And suddenly creatinine begins climbing faster than expected. Let me tell you about Robert, a 68-year-old Vietnam veteran. When I first met him, he believed he was doing everything right. He had eliminated red meat. He ate small portions. He prided himself on not overloading his kidneys. But he was constantly tired. He had lost visible muscle mass in his arms and legs. His albumin was borderline low. His CRP was elevated. His creatinine had increased steadily over 18 months despite no major dietary cheats. What was happening wasn't excess, it was deficiency. When we gradually restored moderate high-quality protein, improved total caloric adequacy, and stabilized his breakfast intake, something shifted. His inflammatory markers declined. His strength improved. His creatinine stabilized. Not dramatically, but measurably. The spiral slowed. Here's the science behind that shift. Albumin is not just a protein in your blood. It's a marker of nutritional status and an independent predictor of mortality in CKD. Multiple longitudinal studies show that lower serum albumin levels correlate with higher progression to end-stage renal disease. Why? Because albumin reflects the body's capacity to maintain structural and immune integrity. When albumin falls, resilience falls. At the same time, muscle acts as a metabolic shock absorber. It buffers glucose swings, supports immune response, and reduces inflammatory signaling. When muscle mass declines, insulin resistance increases. Insulin resistance contributes to endothelial dysfunction, and endothelial dysfunction directly impacts kidney microcirculation. So the real threat isn't too much protein. The real threat is the silent erosion of muscle combined with chronic inflammation. And the tragedy is that many patients don't recognize it because weight loss can look like success. The scale drops, clothes fit looser, but internally the protective tissue is disappearing. Let me ask you something directly. Have you felt weaker over the last year? Not just tired weaker. Do stairs feel harder? Do grocery bags feel heavier? If that's you, don't ignore it. Write strength in the comments below. I read every message and you deserve clarity, not fear. Here's the actionable shift: maintain adequate high biological value protein within recommended kidney guidelines, protect muscle through moderate resistance activity, and ensure total caloric intake is not chronically insufficient. This is not about bulking up. It's about preventing catabolic collapse. Protecting muscle reduces inflammatory signaling. Reducing inflammation reduces renal stress. Stabilizing renal stress slows progression. But here's where it becomes even more critical. Even when patients correct undernutrition, even when they balance protein and preserve muscle, many unknowingly sabotage their kidneys in another way, not by what they eat, but by when they eat it. Because kidney physiology follows a circadian rhythm. Filtration efficiency, hormonal signaling, and metabolic handling shift across the day. And misalignment with that rhythm can amplify strain even if the food itself is correct. So yes, preventing the malnutrition inflammation spiral is powerful. It may even buy you years. But simply knowing this is not enough, because there is another factor more subtle, more overlooked, that can determine whether your kidneys stabilize or continue sliding toward dialysis without you realizing it. And that factor has nothing to do with how much protein you eat, but exactly when you eat it. But just knowing this isn't enough, because there is another factor even more dangerous. If everything we've discussed so far has shifted your perspective, this is where it becomes decisive. Because even when people correct their protein intake, even when they preserve muscle and calm inflammation, they still unknowingly sabotage their kidneys, not by what they eat, but by when they eat it. Timing is the silent variable almost no one talks about yet. It may be the difference between stabilizing kidney function and accelerating decline. Here's what most people don't realize. Your kidneys follow a circadian rhythm. Filtration rate, hormonal regulation, sodium handling, and blood pressure patterns all fluctuate over a 24-hour cycle. During the daytime, your body is metabolically active. Insulin sensitivity is higher. Cortisol naturally rises in the morning. Renal blood flow is optimized to handle nutrient intake. At night, however, the system shifts. Blood pressure is supposed to dip. Filtration load decreases. Cellular repair processes increase. The kidneys are designed to recover, not to process heavy metabolic input. Yet what do many people do? They skip breakfast, eat lightly during the day, then consume the majority of their protein at dinner, steak at 8 p.m., chicken at 9 p.m., sometimes even a high-protein snack before bed. It feels harmless. It feels convenient. But physiologically, it forces the kidneys to process nitrogen waste at a time when renal perfusion is naturally lower, and the body is primed for repair, not digestion. Let me share the case of Margaret, a 64-year-old accountant. She followed every kidney-friendly food list: lean proteins, low sodium, controlled portions. But her labs kept creeping upward. When we reviewed her routine, one pattern stood out. She consumed nearly 70% of her daily protein after 6 p.m. Breakfast was coffee. Lunch was a small salad. Dinner was her largest meal by far. We didn't change the amount of protein, we changed the timing. Within 4 months, her morning blood pressure stabilized. Her overnight swelling decreased. Her creatinine plateaued instead of rising. This isn't magic, it's chronobiology. Research on metabolic timing shows that protein distribution across the day influences muscle protein synthesis efficiency. Morning protein intake supports anabolic signaling and stabilizes blood glucose. Evening overload increases postprandial metabolic stress. In individuals with chronic kidney disease, nocturnal hypertension and non-dipping blood pressure patterns are associated with faster progression to end-stage renal disease. Large evening meals amplify that pattern. Think about it this way: if you force your kidneys to run a marathon at night when they're supposed to be in recovery mode, they never fully reset. Over months and years, that chronic misalignment compounds. I want you to pause here. Are you skipping breakfast? Are you eating your largest protein meal at night? Be honest. If that's you, comment timing below. Awareness is the first correction. Here's the actionable shift: distribute protein earlier in the day. Include high biological value protein at breakfast, even something as simple as egg whites with 1 yolk or Greek yogurt within renal guidelines. Moderate lunch intake. Keep dinner lighter, especially within 3 hours of sleep. Support the kidney's natural rhythm instead of fighting it. This isn't about restriction, it's about synchronization. And here's the deeper layer, the one few discuss. Nighttime is when blood pressure dipping should occur. If heavy evening protein elevates nighttime metabolic demand, blood pressure may remain elevated. That sustained nocturnal pressure damages delicate glomerular capillaries over time. Many patients labeled as stable CKD are actually experiencing slow microvascular injury every single night because of misaligned meal timing. When Margaret shifted her intake earlier, she didn't just change numbers on paper. She felt lighter in the morning. Her sleep improved. Her morning swelling reduced. The body responds when rhythm is restored. But here is the uncomfortable truth: even timing alone isn't the final piece. Because some individuals correct their intake, correct their distribution, and still watch their labs worsen. Why? Because there is one last overlooked variable that determines whether all of this becomes protective or insufficient. And that final factor is not about food at all. It's about something most people underestimate every single day. But just knowing this isn't enough, because there is another factor even more dangerous. If you take nothing else away from today's discussion, remember this: your kidneys are not fragile glass. They are intelligent, adaptive organs that respond to how you nourish and respect your body over time. Fear-based restriction is not the answer. Precision is. Balanced protein, intelligent timing, muscle preservation, and inflammation control. These are not extreme strategies. They are practical, sustainable shifts that put you back in control. And no matter where your lab numbers are today, there is almost always room to slow progression, stabilize function, and protect what you still have. You are not powerless in this process. If this video helped you see kidney health differently, I want you to do 2 simple things. First, save this video so you can come back to it and review the key points, because consistency beats intensity every time. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I regularly share evidence-based, practical medical insights designed specifically to help you protect your kidneys, manage creatinine wisely, and make confident decisions without panic. There is so much misinformation online, and you deserve guidance grounded in real physiology, not fear. And most importantly, don't lose hope. I have seen patients stabilize labs that once looked like they were spiraling. I have seen strength return, inflammation calm down, and confidence rebuild, not because of miracle cures, but because of steady, informed action. Your kidneys respond to patterns, not perfection. Start with one change. Protect your muscle. Respect your rhythm. Nourish, don't starve. And remember, the earlier you act, the more function you preserve. Stay informed, stay consistent, and I will see you in the next video.